Hey, so today we're going to be making a model of a database that I want to make. Let's get to it. First off, let's go through some vocabulary of what things mean. ER stands for entity relationship, and an ER diagram like this shows us the different relationships between the entities. An entity is the representation of what is going to be a table in our finished database, and an attribute is going to be a column in that database. So it's the representation of a column. So naturally, entity relationship means the relationship between the entities in our database. And the rest of the vocabulary we're just going to go through as we go. So the first thing we're going to do is we're going to go into Lucidchart and choose the ER diagram entity relationship, which is going to be landing you on a page that looks like this. Now we're going to remove all of these entities because we want a blank slate to begin with. So what are we going to be making a database of today? I figured would make a database of my movies that I have at home. So I'm going to drag out my first entity here. By the way, field is the same as attribute, which is the representation of a column in the database. Okay, so I want to name my entity movie. And let me just drag this out a bit. And the first field I'm going to call title because I want to know the title of the movies. Next, I'm going to go with movie ID. Then I'm going to name the next one duration because I want to know how long the movie is, how many minutes it lasts. And now just let's speed things up a bit so you can see how the full model looks when I've added most of the entities. And we'll also go through the relationship between the entities in a minute. Cool, so this is our model so far. Let's add the final entity, which is going to be the director. So as I mentioned before, it's going to be director. That's the name of this entity. And let's enlarge this a bit so it's easier to read. Cool. The first field is going to be called ID. Next one's going to be called first name, because I want to know the first name of the director, and then the last name of the director. And I would also like to know the birth year and the gender of the director. So let's put that in there. Let's see. Birth year, there we go. And gender. Next up, we are going to be talking about this column down here with the keys. We're going to be putting in a symbol like this, or two letters like this, PK, which stands for primary key. The primary key is being used to identify the different rows in our table later. So a primary key has to be unique, and it should not contain any repetitions or any null marks. We've already put an FK into movie, two actually. FK stands for foreign key. A foreign key points back to the primary key. It can contain null marks, and it can repeat itself. In our director entity, ID is our primary key, so let's just quickly clear out the rest. And let's just add some data types in here. We're going to use varchar, which is a string type. And we're going to use integer, which is a numeric type. We can use whole numbers with integer. So let's see here, ID is going to be an int, not a varchar. There we go, int. And first name is going to be a varchar. And let's put 100 as a max. Last name is also going to be a varchar 100. 100 is the number of letters or symbols the string can have. Next up, birth year is an int. Let's see here, int. And gender is a varchar. Let's put the varchar to 30. There we go. Let's try and connect the entity movie to the entity director. So we're connecting director to movie. Now let's have a look at the relationships that define how strong the entity is. When the line between the entities is stapled like this, it means that it's a strong entity. That means that the entity can exist on its own. This is called a non-identifying relationship. Next we have the fully drawn line, and this defines a weak entity. That means that the existence of the entity relies on the existence of the entity which it is connected to. And that is called an identifying relationship. So the question we need to ask ourselves is, can director exist without movie? And yes, it can. Now you can try to argue that a director couldn't be a director without a movie, but in my database, a director can exist without a movie. And that's end of discussion. Now moving on to cardinality. So this is further defining the relationship between the entities. How many directors can a movie have, and how many movies can a director have? These are things that we will be defining with the crow's foot notation. And here we have the different ways of defining a relationship. We have one, we have many, one and only one, zero or one or many, zero or many. Let's get on to defining the relationship between the entity movie and the entity director. The question that we need to ask ourselves is how many directors can a movie have, and how many movies can a director have? Excluding the fact that a movie can have a co-director, in my case, here in this diagram, we'll say that a movie can have one and only one director. Now we want to look at how many movies can a director have. And I'd like to say that in order for the director to be in my database, it has to have one or more movies. There you go. Let's zoom out a bit. That's the whole database model. Hope you enjoyed yourself. Hope you learned something. Have a wonderful day.